So today, before I bring up the next speaker, we will have, normally we have PDH codes. Today we're going to have KCH quotes. So this is your first PCA or KCH quote of the day. And if I understand correctly, that we'll have actually PDH codes here too, but we'll see. All right, our next speaker is, you like that picture? Our next speaker is Mike Schneider. Mike is with Baker, and he met Ken in 1978, he said. And that's the extent of it. I'll bring you on up, and he's going to speak a little bit on the ACI Foundation and his experience. Do you have
Well, Mike's loading that. The corollary to that is I remember from 675, slump. The other quote is, slump, too much slump is like too much milk in the mashed potatoes.
Yes.
I remember that and use that to this day.
There you go.
Okay, so I met Ken in 1978, but I happen to know his brother pretty well. And anyway, this is Ken at a young age, and you can see the look in his eyes, the mischievousness right there. What he grew up to be, his senior graduating picture. Here's Ken. Now again, Tom and I couldn't decide whether this was his first start at research or multitasking, but we weren't sure. Now, you're going to hear later today from Calvin McCall about Ken's prowess and expertise as an operator. But this is Ken's first attempt at operating here in the neighborhood, pulling his little brother around. And then on the far right side, Ken, you want to read that to us since you wrote it?
No, why don't you read it?
So this was on Christmas morning. Again, Ken was the first one up, and this was his first attempt at a contract. And so the first person up in the morning on Christmas, December 1961, must wake up the person before even peeking at the presents and may not open them until everybody's presented themselves and in the room of living, and may get dressed before entering the above room. So it was signed by Ken Hover, and he had the rest of the family sign it. So, again, here's Ken. It must have been on Easter. And then on the right, we think that is Ken's first attempt. He was inspecting the foundation of his house to find out if it was structurally sound. Ken was in the Boy Scouts, and I did a little research. This is actually the troop roster that he was in. It was in Evendale, Ohio, and this is from 1963. And right up here, this is Ken Hover. His brother Tom was in there, and his dad was the scoutmaster of the troop. This is Ken getting his God and Country Award and his Eagle Scout. And Ken has told me the story of he wanted to be a teacher. And he was waiting for his parents to pick him up. He went to Princeton High School in Cincinnati. And while he was waiting, Turner Construction was doing something across the street, and there was a surveyor out there doing some work. And Ken told his, I think it was your dad, when he picked him up, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. So he switched from the teaching to wanting to do something with surveying. So that's Surveying Merit Badge, which is one of the merit badges that Ken got. So he went on and went to the University of Cincinnati, and these are sort of the old logos and the new logos, but he got his undergrad degree from the University of Cincinnati, and then he got his master's degree from the University of Cincinnati. He went out as an intern at what's called the Big Mac Bridge in Cincinnati, and these are construction pictures that Ken sent me, and they had bid the job as a subcontractor to do the concrete work. And they thought it was going to be Bethlehem Steel that got the job, but it ended up being Bristol Steel. But Ken's mother, and so Ken was worried when they knew they were in good shape with Bethlehem, but they got dropped out on a bid technicality. And they weren't sure where they stood with the other contractor. Ken's mother said, Ken, you're going to get the job. A company, I don't know who it is, but a company with the initials of B has a job, and you guys are going to get it. And so that's what happened. Ken helped bid the job, and as is only correct, then he had to build it. So there's what it looks like today. That's when he was with Dugan and Myers. And part of what happened when he was there doing this job, he also was going to grad school. So he had arranged his schedule. He'd be at the job in the morning, take the appropriate classes during the day or in the evening, and got his master's degree. Here, while he's working at Dugan and Myers, the first picture on the left, that's his first design. That's a set of stairs that he put in. And on the right is, again, his boss was a guy named Fran Dugan. He was the owner at Dugan and Myers. And this is Madeira Swim Club. And Ken got sent out to do this. The owner, the manager of the swim club, wanted the shuffleboard court. And he told Ken, his performance spec, if there were any cracks, Dugan and Myers would not get paid. Ken, how old were you then?
Roughly 22.
22 years old. Now, how's that for, Matt, you thought you had it tough in class. These are real dollars. And so Ken designed this. There was a lot of re-steel, and now he's still working on the bridge, doing his work. He went out and wet cured this 30 days in a row. Not 7 days wet cured, Terry, 30 days. He would leave his job from the bridge and go out and make sure it was wet cured. It's still there today. And they got paid. They got paid. After a little stint, he was in the Army. After he got out of grad school, he, on one of the projects he'd been on, the Dugan and Myers had hired a company called THB. At the time, it was called Talarico Heffel and Associates. And he got to know them, and after he got out of grad school, went to work at THP. To the amazement of his instructors at the University of Cincinnati, these buildings are still standing. And, so here is, oops. So this is One Lido Place. It's apartment buildings in downtown Cincinnati, right on the river. He was part of the team that did that. But right here, this is the Hamilton County Justice Center. And by that time, Ken was the lead. He was the team lead on this particular job. And again, we'll hear several times a day about Ken's character. This particular job, he was possibly going to Cornell. He had sent things out to several different schools to go get his PhD. And Cornell, he ended up getting the assignment at Cornell, or an offer from Cornell. He was supposed to start in September. And this project wasn't finished. There was some delays. It weren't his fault. They were driven on the project. And he had given his word. He was going to finish this job. He called the people at Cornell and basically says, I can't start in September. If it costs me my fellowship, so be it. But my word is my bond, and I need to finish this job before I come. The people at Cornell, they said, start when you need to. We know even now that we made the right decision, just because of what you did. If you're willing to put this on the line, you're the guy we want. And so his Cornell history, the rest speaks for itself. Ken and I, when I had a concrete problem, I would call Ken. Well, Ken had a lab accident, and he called me because I know a little bit about safety, not a whole lot, but at Baker I was the champion for safety, and had this lab accident. We started talking, and Ken did his root cause analysis and talked to class, and all was good, except that was a spring class. And then the following summer, it was like the second day of summer school. Ken goes down to the lab. I still remember where I was at. I was teaching a class in our Denver office. I was on a break. I talked to Ken, and he is just frustrated. He said, Mike, all that stuff that I had done in the spring, that group got it. He said, I go in there this morning, and it's the same thing. People in flip-flops, no eye protection, just, but it's a new group of students. And he says, we have got to do something, because again, we are doing things to prepare students to be able to design buildings, to go out there and build buildings, but what you as contractors, what the industry needs is people that understand safety also. And we're not preparing our students for that. And so Ken and I, we wrote 2 articles that were in CI, and Keith helped us with those, thank you. But again, these were back in 2019 and 2020, but basically on lab safety and the importance of that. And again, preparing students as they come out into the industry. So Ken, thank you very much. Again, I have sent these to a number of lab people over the years, and I'm sure you have also. Ken and I, where we really got to know each other, we were both members of the Greater Miami Valley chapter of ACI, which is Southwest Ohio. And this is a presentation in October of 1979. And there was a panel discussion, but here's myself, Ken Hover, pre-Dr. Hover, and here's Dan Baker. If there is any other chapter that had 3 future ACI presidents on a single panel, I want to see photographic evidence. Absolutely amazing that we were all 3 on the same panel in 1979. That's pretty amazing. Now again, probably Ken's students will be able to tell you, I've been to Ken's office, so I can say this. Ken was able to pull this out of his files. And I'm sure, Matt, Bruno, I'm sure you're not surprised that he was able to do that. I want to talk a little bit about the Ken Hover Fellowship. So on the right is a letter that Ken, in February 11, 1982, he was the recipient of a fellowship from ACI. And here, I just want to read one line from this. It says, from the application received, your qualifications have been judged as those which indicate the highest potential for making the most significant contributions to the concrete profession. Wow, how prophetic that was. And Ken, thank you very much. So the scholarship committee that year got it right. So very good. There is a fellowship that's been set up in Ken's honor, and again, the awardees will get a $10,000 stipend, and they get to attend 3 ACI conventions, and they'll have an industry mentor. To date, we have raised, I don't know what we may have gotten yesterday, but Carrie, I think we're at $282,000 is what we have raised.
Before convention.
Before convention, yes. We are trying to raise $350,000, and if we get that, this scholarship, fellowship will live in perpetuity as we, so there will always be a Ken Hover Fellowship. So there are a number of companies that I have contacted that have contributed, and again, we've got $25 contributions up to $100,000 contributions. So there's a whole range of, but if you're so inclined, the codes, there's stuff around here. If someone leaves here at the end of the day not knowing about the Ken Hover Fellowship, somehow we have made a big mistake, or you have trouble comprehending. You would not have made it through Dr. Hover's class. Okay, so I got a little bit of time here. How much time I got, Mike?
6 minutes?
6 minutes. So again, one of the funniest, most fun evenings I ever had was back at Con Expo. Ken, I don't know what year it was, but Ken and his brother Tom and myself had dinner along with a gentleman named Wally Adamczyk, who has a consulting company called Firestarter, and myself.
And Chris Tull.
Oh, and Chris Tull, yeah. No, is Chris in here? Okay, Chris is another student. Anyway, I have never laughed so hard. And one of the stories, the reason Tom could not join us today, he had a therapy session, and he is suffering from PTSD, and that is post-traumatic shoe syndrome. Now, I cannot tell you that story. That's just to get you to come hear Calvin McCall at 4:30, because Calvin is going to talk about the story, and everybody thinks of Ken being this righteous guy, nice guy, never do anything wrong. He's a minister, you know, just does everything right. Well, he is a big brother also, and I'm a big brother. I've got 5 younger brothers, and I've probably done some things that they weren't too happy about. And Ken did a number of things over the years that Tom felt abused. And when I called Tom last week, I said, I need some help putting this presentation together, and remember all those times that Kenny picked on you? This is your chance to get even. So that's how I got those pictures, okay? But in all seriousness, Ken, I've got a couple of things here I'd like to read that your brother wrote. So again, I got some of the bad stuff here. I'm not going to do that. I'll let Calvin cover that. But Ken, the problem solver and motivator. While we were in the Boy Scouts, we were about 11 and 14 years old. Ken and I camped out in our backyard in the suburbs one night, and he taught me how to properly build a campfire. And in the morning, how to cook breakfast on that fire. All was going well, but when I cracked those eggs into the pan, the yolks broke, and the eggs were a mess, running all over, and I was almost in tears, not knowing what to do. Ken said, just stir them up and keep the pan flat for a minute. And I said, Tom asked, what's that going to do? And he said, you just made an omelet. I asked, what's an omelet? He said, it's a real fancy way to make eggs. And you made an omelet, Tom. That's hard to do, but you did it. Well, that's the way Ken encouraged me many, many times as we grew up, and he still does. And he's got another one here. He taught me a lot growing up, and even more in the scouting experience. He was the drive that pushed me to also achieve the Eagle Scout Award. He was also the inspiration for me to start into a trade as an operating engineer apprentice and learn about as many machines as I could to build my knowledge base. He taught me to recognize opportunities and to make the best decisions I could based on all the available information. This, and always respecting Ken for what he accomplished and how he treated those he worked with along the way, made a big difference for me. I had a 50-year career in the equipment industry and finished it out working with engineers and design of forestry equipment. Not only have I always been proud of my brother Ken for his work, but also thankful for the times he pointed out the possible pitfalls or consequences of the wrong decisions. Yep, he was a big brother, all right, but I'm glad he was my big brother because he made it all the difference for me and many others. Even today, I run into some of the old Boy Scouts, and they ask how my brother Kenny is doing. They all have a positive Ken Hover story. So, Ken, just wants you to know that you're very much appreciated. Thank you very much.